After a 5-week school break, all government schools are expected to resume business today. Ms. Edabon, the Deputy Executive Director in the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, now joins us with plans put in place for the remainder of the year. Guten Morgen, Frau Bonn. Herzlich willkommen.
Guten Morgen, Herr Kisting, and good morning to the nation. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you, Ms. Bonn, to talk about this very important matter. Before we proceed to talk about what awaits us in the second semester, let's recap the first half of the year. How did that go?
Yeah, the first half of the year, remember, it started off with a late release of exam results in terms of admission to tertiary institutions. So we had to jiggle there and negotiate with tertiary institutions. It was also the first year where we had AS level, advanced subsidiary level school graduates, and it was the year after, our exam leakage. So it was a bit of a wobbly start, but we soon got into swing. And one of the biggest achievements that we can note to the year 2022 is that our skills-based pre-vocational course that is offered at resource schools. Those are what used to be called the special schools for learners with special needs. They are now accredited. They are registered on the Namibia qualifications framework at level 1. And that enables these school leavers to articulate further in their school careers. So that is a snapshot of the past 6 months.
I'm happy you're reminding us about the delayed release of the results that necessitated these negotiations with institutions of higher learning. One would imagine and take it for granted that negotiations on the home front would be easier. Talk to us about the engagements that you had with institutions of higher learning outside the borders of the country. We do know that many Namibians flock to neighboring South Africa to further their studies there. Did those bear any fruits?
Yes, those we handled one by one, basically, and negotiated and released as we could the results as they became available. We did, because we, as I said, on one-on-one, the Directorate of Examinations would be in direct contact with those universities where we were alerted, and then we're seeing how, the results became available and made them available for these individual school leavers. Yeah.
Pulling off what the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture does on a daily, weekly, monthly and yearly basis is certainly no walk in the park. Returning briefly to the snapshot that you gave us in your introductory overview, please touch on some of the persisting challenges.
Yeah, the persisting challenges is, of course, to make sure, number one, that there is a teacher in every classroom, that teachers are recruited, that school principals are recruited, and heads of departments to keep the flow, so to say. But also the supply of learning support materials, stationery, and everything that comes along with that. We also, there's a certain degree of maintenance that is required. And we find that with the, the resource constraints that everybody experiences with these economic downturns and the effect of COVID-19 altogether, I mean, we cannot just attribute it to COVID, but there is a challenge to just keep up with the demands and needs on the ground.
One of the challenges that you just flagged relating to a teacher per classroom is, of course, a very serious one. Do we have an indication, more or less, what the overall picture looks like in this country in terms of classrooms being without teachers?
Yes, we are aware of, especially in the scarce skills when it comes to ICT, that's now computer studies or computer science. There's a shortage. There's also in design and technology, we often have a shortage. And then, of course, mathematics, the sciences. Sciences is split as of a senior secondary. It is then physics and chemistry. In the past, we trained for physical science, and now we have to, add on to that. We have had continuous professional development activities for our teachers. We also had material development course where teachers came together to develop learning support materials, teacher guides for these subjects in order to support the teachers. But it is an extra load and an extra mile that we have to, invest in.
Training for the trainers by the trainers.
Yes, something like that.
Let's have a look at enrollment figures, both in terms of pupils attending school, but also those who reside in hostels. What does it look like?
Yeah, it's more than 822,000 learners that we have in school currently. And then for the hostels, the spaces are up to 65,000 learners in hostels. We observed fluctuation there because what we also tried to do is to keep stricter control and avoid overcrowding in hostels. So we have observed that we are expanding where possible, where the resources allow and the planning made provision for that, the hostel infrastructure. We know there are some regions with the expansion of access to advanced subsidiary, which is, so to say, an additional school year. There is a demand for more space in hostel at certain schools because so far advanced subsidiary is not offered at every senior secondary schools. So learners would move to these centers and then these centers would have a shortage of hostel space. So that is the situation and we are trying to mitigate it as good as possible.
I remember after the hard lockdown in 2020 that we lost quite a number of pupils. Losing implying that they were nowhere to be found, they didn't return to school. Were we able to get an indication in the meantime what had happened to those pupils and to address that matter?
Now, in terms of individuals, tracking individuals, we are still behind. It's our ambition to have unique identifiers for every learner. It is planned. The infrastructure in terms of IT is already existing. We just have to, roll out the modalities in what we want to work together with Home Affairs in terms of birth registers and being more proactive to, track learners and make sure that they register for school, enroll and remain in school until the 11th, the 12th year that ends with the ordinary level exams, and depending on their performance to proceed. But yes, we had observed a drop in numbers, and that is with the long prolonged lockdowns, what we have observed, of course, is learner pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, contributing to it, but then also socioeconomic circumstances. Some households lost family members, the breadwinners. We might end up with child-headed households and so on, and we are yet to, support from all sectors. That is social welfare and so on, in order to make sure that all learners remain in school.
Speaking about teenage pregnancy, it's also a challenge that persists. What does the picture look like firstly, and more importantly, what is being done about it?
Yeah, they are always close to 3,000 that we observe that fall
per annum.
Yeah, close to it. So it fluctuates, and then these are, of course, the ministry has a policy that emphasizes prevention and management. It allows for cultural diversity. There are different approaches in different cultures, and it tries to accommodate that altogether in terms of the implementation. But what the ministry's stand is, and what the ministry is also known of internationally, is that all learners should be and stay in school, even those girl learners who are falling pregnant should remain as long as possible in school and return, depending on the circumstances, not to disadvantage the newborn child, but to return to school and complete their school career, because it is research proven that an educated mother will, turn the situation around in terms of socioeconomic standing, as well as, you know, income generation and so on. So it would be counterproductive to exclude a pregnant girl child from education. It would just exacerbate the, you know, the economic adversities for that household.
I'm sure many will deem it progressive that the ministry accommodates cultural diversity. What happens in an instance where the particular cultural practice prohibits the girl from returning to school? Does the ministry have the power to intervene in such an instance?
Well, power, I would not say. We would work on good reasoning, and every school principal has the more or less has the responsibility to remain in touch with these families, and then find the best way how to, you know, ensure that this girl child either, you know, resumes school at a different school once, you know, the pregnancy has been lived out, and you know, the newborn child has a secure surroundings. So that is one of the practices, and then school principals would have to have that relationship that they accommodate learners from their schools. But we observe that there is still this about shunning, keeping away the girls. And then, of course, we from the ministry side would like to emphasize the prevention of it all. And that means giving the required reproductive health education to enable the girls to take care of themselves and make sure that they do not fall pregnant. Because after all, that is education's responsibility as well.
Very well, Ms. Bonner. I wish we had an entire day to unpack this very important matter, but we don't. So the second half of the academic year resumes today. Talk to us about measures that have been put in place to deal with all the challenges that come with it, including the resumption of the feeding program, but also a sense of how the administrative management of these two broad semesters work for the ministry. Yeah.
The semesters as such with a longer holiday during the winter time have been introduced mostly because of the flu, the pandemic, to make sure that when, you know, it's cold, that learners need not to be on the road to school and so on. So I think it was of advantage already, this 5-week break during the winter time. And as we see temperatures improving, we hope that, you know, we also continue taking care of ourselves, as well as, you know, following the health measures for preventing the spread of the virus. But in terms of the ministry of making time effectively and, you know, efficiently making use of time, we had to adjust the school calendar to compare to what it was released, because as it was released, school would have resumed until in mid of December.
We just need to keep it brief, please, Ms. Bond.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, so we had to stop earlier in order to have the exams ready, and therefore we had to cut the holiday by the 1 week. And that also brought, you know, with the public holiday, or not, it's not a public, but it's a school holiday, World Teachers' Day. So we moved the midterm break to that week, that the entire week would not have too much interruption. So in terms of managing, then it means for the senior secondary grades that exams start in the second week of October and would conclude end of November, and that would enable the ministry to release the results in time.
Provided there's no leak of exam papers again. Yeah.
Yes.
Am I hearing you correctly that you are ready, and also the feeding programs will resume today?
Yes. All service providers have been identified.
Frau Bonn, danke für Ihre Zeit und viel Erfolg.
Thank you so much, and all the best here too.
Dankeschön. There you have it, the Deputy ED of Education, Arts and Culture, Ms. Era Bonn, talking to us about the resumption of the second half of the academic year today, but also other challenges and milestones in the ministry.